That is tremendous. Gosh, where do I start? Can I say praise the Lord? Praise the Lord. My favorite part about being up here is that I get to take a picture of you. I will, of course, post that on Twitter. I'm so honored to be asked to speak with you this evening. I have so much that I want to say, so I'll talk fast, but I'm from New York, I can do that. I go around the country, I have to tell you. I live in New York City with my wife and our 15-year-old daughter, and I go around the country and typically get very encouraged. I come to a place like this, and because you're here, I'm guessing most of you don't appreciate what you have. It's a beautiful thing. It's an encouraging thing. Sometimes you have to not have it to really appreciate it, I think. That's often the way it works in life. When we just heard Brandy Smale talk about totally not getting it a few years ago, and how when you get it, it just means that much more to you because you once didn't get it. You think, wow. But most of us, I think as time goes by, we take it for granted. And I just want to tell you, from the Lord, don't take it for granted. What you have here, this community of faith, is very special, very encouraging for me to see. I want to share a few things with you. I really want to tell you, first of all, my faith journey, which is a little bit like what Brandy shared. I didn't always get it, but by God's grace, eventually I got it, and I'd like to hang on to it until I get to glory. But I want to tell you a little bit about my faith journey. First of all, thank you again. Thank you, Paul Fisher, and all of you here. Thank you from Messiah for sponsoring this. But let me tell you a little bit about my faith journey and how I came to write about some of these heroes of the faith that you've heard about this evening. All right, first of all, I'll start at the beginning. I was born. I can't tell you much about it. I was very young at the time. It's a dumb joke. Good night. Been a great audience. Good night. I'll start before that. My mom and dad came to this country from war-torn Europe. My dad came from Greece in the mid-50s. My mom came from Germany. They met in an English class in New York City. Obviously, they didn't speak English when they came here. And I think, talk about the American dream. They didn't get to go to college, but in this country, they were able to have two sons and to raise them and to see them go to good schools. And what we have in this country is something that, because my family didn't always have it, I appreciate it because we come from the other side. And my mother came from East Germany, which was under communism. Some of you know that's bad. In New York City right now, actually, we have a communist mayor. I don't know if you knew that. That's a joke. It's actually not that funny because it's almost true. And he killed a groundhog and then tried to cover it up. Look into that. Look into that. There's a school paper. You can break that wide open. If you're raised Greek and German, as I say, my father's, praise God, he's still alive, 87. My mom is alive. If you're raised Greek and German, you know what that means? It means you're raised Greek. If you've ever met, I don't know, is anybody here who's Greek? I doubt it. Yeah, Greeks don't wander in. Oh, we got a Greek here, this far into Pennsylvania. How did that happen? I don't know. You run a pizza parlor? Something. I don't understand. But I was raised in the Greek community. If you're raised in the Greek community, it's a beautiful thing, right? But the problem is, I was raised in the Greek Orthodox Church, right? But the problem is that I never really got the gospel. It was mostly about the wonderfulness of the Greek community. And if you talk to Greeks, they will tell you we're extremely wonderful people. The most wonderful ethnic group on the planet. We'll tell you that. And so, but the thing is that, if that's as far as you get, that's a wonderful thing, but it's not enough. If you go to church on Sunday, which I did, I was an altar boy, you need to get the whole thing. You need to get who is Jesus. You need to get the worldview. You need to get all. And a lot of people in America, I'm just telling you this, they might go to church, but they're not getting that. They're not getting that. And so I thought I was a Christian because I figured I'm not a Muslim, not a Jew, not an atheist, I must be a Christian, right? And I went to college, and I went to Yale University, which some of you may know is slightly secular. Just slightly, just a little bit. And to be perfectly fair, that's only for the last 210 years. Before that, they were rock solid. But so, if you don't know what you believe, and you go to a place like Yale, or pretty much any university in America that's not straight up Christian, you're gonna be in trouble. And I went to Yale, I wanted to be a writer, I was an English major. But if you're asking the big questions about who am I, what's the meaning of life, you don't ask those questions at those places because those places have absolutely no answer for it. They don't want to admit they have no answer because to really say I have no answer to that, it's embarrassing, it's horrifying, and it should be because we are made to know the answers to those kinds of things. But that's why it gives me joy to speak at an event like this for a Christian school, because I understand that if you don't answer those questions, those are at the heart of everything else. You can give people information and skills that at the end of the day are worth nothing unless you know that you are created in the image of God, that He loves you, that He died for you, that He's given your life a purpose, that He wants you to have purpose and joy, to be part of a great journey and adventure. That's why we're here on the planet. But if you don't know that, if you didn't have the privilege of going to a wonderful Christian school like Coventry, and you go to a college like I did, you don't ask those questions. But the problem is that everybody is asking those questions, whether you ask it out loud or not. We all wonder because we're made to wonder, right? We're made to wonder by a God who created us for meaning. And so while I was at Yale, I began to pick up, you drink the Kool-Aid, you swim, you inhale the zeitgeist, and you basically graduate sure that you can't ask those questions because there are no answers, right? Now, if you're not told the truth, what are you going to get? What's the alternative to this idea? The alternative to the idea is that we evolved out of nothing. Now, I'm not even going to debate whether we evolved or how we evolved or whatever. The point is, however we got here, okay, we know God created us, and we know that He has a purpose for us. It was all intentional, right? However many years old the earth is or whatever, that's a separate argument. And when Christians, bloody each other over those kinds of arguments, that's stupid. That's called, it's the vain jangling. What is the New Testament phrase? Vain jangling, doubtful disputations. It's we don't need to major in that kind of stuff. What we need to major in is the fact that God created us intentionally in His image. How? We can talk about all day long. But if you don't believe that, what do you believe? You believe we got here by accident. You believe that we got here by accident. So therefore your life has no meaning. You're not even supposed to be here. There's no supposed. There's nobody there to intend anything. There's no God. It's utterly bleak. It means that there is no meaning. Life has no meaning. The love you feel for your children, your spouse, that's just chemicals designed to perpetuate the species. There's nothing transcendent. Who can face that? Now, nobody can really face that, and I'll tell you why. Because it just so happens we're created by a God with meaning and so on and so forth. So the idea that you can adopt this worldview and say, well, I'm cool with that, you can't possibly be cool with that if you actually think about it. Because to believe that life is utterly meaningless is so bleak we don't want to kill ourselves. It's just the worst thing. So what you do is you go through life trying not to think about it. You try to think about anything but that, right? So I graduated Yale, and I think, the goal at that point, we're not going to get answers to the big questions. So the goal of life is to keep yourself busy, occupied, and distracted for just a few decades, and it'll all be over. And what you're supposed to do is get like a really good job and work really, really, really hard. On the weekends, there's like alcohol and sports. You'll get through. It's just a few decades. Thank you for chuckling. That's meant to be slightly humorous. Thank you. And my problem was I was an English major. I wanted to be a writer. Therefore, I did not get a good job. Mistake number one. So I wanted to be a writer. What do? Well, I floundered for a season. If you say season, it sounds biblical, right? I floundered for a season, then I drifted for a season, and then I floundered and drifted together for a season. And if you do that, this is like math. If you do that, you will end up moving back in with your parents. That's it. And I did. Now, if you move in with your parents, just I don't recommend it. By the way, I definitely don't recommend moving in with my parents. Because I think I mentioned my parents are European immigrants. They don't have that typical American attitude, like, oh, Eric's finding himself, you know. No, their attitude's like, hey, Eric, we work menial jobs to put you through an Ivy League school, so we would love you to find yourself a job and get out. And that's called tough love. And so I had a really hard year when I moved back with my parents. I was about 24, but I was lost. And when I say I was lost, you know, we ought not to assume that because somebody doesn't know Jesus as Savior, that they're some bold sinner or some Marxist atheist. Most people in America, I believe, are just lost. They don't know the answers. They're trying to figure it out. They're getting through. That was me. I was not some God hater or anything like that. And there's no shame in being an agnostic, right? At least maybe you're open-minded. I was open-minded. I was not happy. I was thinking, I just want to know what's true. If it's true that there's no meaning to life, okay, I'll kill myself, but not yet. And if there is meaning to life, and if there's a God, why doesn't he reveal himself to me? I just want to know what's true. And again, as Christians, we have to understand, we're not selling some brand, right? It's not about convincing people to buy our brand, to join our tribe. Who cares? It's about what's true. If this is not true, we're all fools. I believe that is scriptural. I believe Paul says that, correct? He says that if Jesus didn't rise bodily, we're the most to be pitied. But if it is true, I want to know. I want to live my life around what is true, whatever it is. And so I was lost, and I was floundering. I ended up getting a job at Union Carbide in Danbury, Connecticut. Now, I was working as a proofreader. I was editor of the Yale Humor magazine. I was writing poetry and short stories. I want to be a writer. And now I get a job as a proofreader at a chemical conglomerate. And the Hebrew word is Gehenna. A biblically literate crowd. I like it. I'll come back. So I was miserable. And in the midst of that hell, and believe me, living with working class European immigrant parents, when you're a 24-year-old college graduate who's lost, that is no fun, ladies and gentlemen, right? I was miserable. And in the midst of this misery, God sent a friend. A guy who just shared his faith with me, winsomely. He was not like one of those sawed-off, pain-in-the-neck, born-again Christians who don't shut up. Any of those here? Just raise your hand quick. Anybody? You can't shut up about your faith even though you're colleagues? It's good to drive people away from Jesus, right? This guy was on fire for Jesus, but he was respectful and winsome, and he shared his faith with me for months because I was, I was trained at Yale to avoid those people like the plague, those crazy Christians. And, but over time, because I was suffering, I was open, we had these conversations, but I wasn't buying it. He said, you want to have a Bible study? No. Want to go to church with me Sunday? No. But keep talking, because I'm in pain. Well, by the grace of God, one night I had a dream. You can see this on my website. I won't tell you the story, but if you just go to ericmetaxas.com, I am second. Amazing folks make these videos. And I told the story. I had a dream, and this is how I know I must be secretly a Muslim. Anybody get that joke? I don't know. I never cared. I just did. I had a dream, and in the dream, Jesus revealed himself to me utterly miraculously. Now, I don't know about you, but if there is a God, I want to know that he actually does miracles today. And what happened to me was a miracle. God revealed himself to me in this dream in such a way that completely blew my mind. I woke up knowing what I was sure you couldn't even know, that Jesus is God, that the Bible is true. I woke up knowing these things. And that's 26 years ago. And so I know that anything I ever achieve is only by God's grace. I don't just say that because you're supposed to. I know that that is true. But he changed my life. I immediately gave my career over to him, which is a great idea because I had not been managing it that well. And I said, Lord, you know me. You made me. You know, you realize he made you and he invented you. It's not like, making sandwiches. Imagine, I can make a sandwich. I didn't invent the sandwich. You see the difference? God invented you. And he knows everything about you, everything he put into you. He knows your fears, your dreams, and he created you for his purpose. And so you say, Lord, I'm not going to pretend that I know what that purpose is. Lord, lead me and guide me. Show me what you made me for. We are meant to have a relationship with him so he can lead us and guide us. And I didn't know this till I was 25 years old. And I can't tell you how many times I think when I come to a school like this, I think, what would life be like if I had known these things when I was younger? Praise God that our kids can know these things. I forgot to mention my daughter, she's now 15, but she went to a classical Christian school in New York City, in Manhattan. We have Christians in Manhattan. And actually, in all seriousness, God's doing amazing things in New York City. Amazing things. We're not yet Pottstown or Dallas, don't get me wrong. But things are happening, I will tell you. And my daughter went to a classical Christian school, and she loved it. To be fair, she did chafe at the non-smoking policy. Yeah, that's a joke. Sorry. So I won't use that one again tonight. And she absolutely, was surrounded by people of faith, whose families were people of faith. It was a wonderful experience. And I wonder, what would it be like to experience that? But by God's grace, I experienced that at age 25, basically. And all these years, I've been saying, Lord, lead me. Show me what you have for me. I'm not going to pretend that I wanted to write biographies. I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And so I said, Lord, lead me. Now, he led me in a strange, meandering path. And by the way, I think that, if you really trust him, he can lead you more effectively, right? He can lead you to places that seem weird, but you say, I don't care. Jesus, as long as you're in this, I know it's going to be okay. You've got the bigger picture. That's the key. He's got the bigger picture. And he led me, some of you know, we mentioned earlier that I had worked for VeggieTales, one of the great thrills of my life. And I had no, oh, now you're listening, right? I know. But I didn't want to write children's books. I'll be honest with you, I never had the idea, but God knew what he wanted to do with me. I've written 30 children's books by now. If you told me that when I was in college, I would have said, you're crazy. I'm never going to write a children's book. Who cares about that? God created me in part to do that. So I worked for VeggieTales. Now, in case you really want to know what I did for VeggieTales, basically I kept Bob the Tomato away from the hooch. He was a big drinker. I shouldn't say that. There's children in the room. That's not true. At VeggieTales, I didn't do as much as people think. I wrote a number of books for them, God Made You Special and different things, but I wrote half of the Lyle the Kindly Viking script. I wrote the Hamlet omelet parody. I really think that's going to be my tombstone. And I'm the voice of the narrator on the Esther video. That's the big one for me, that I was able to be in a VeggieTale. Now, I know it's a vegetable universe, so logically the narrator, even though you don't see him, must be a vegetable narrator. So the only question is what kind of vegetable, and I don't know. I think I was broccoli raw, but I don't know. So that's like method acting. I felt like I was a broccoli raw, but I don't know. But I had the joy of working for VeggieTales. I had the great joy of working for Chuck Colson, my hero, my mentor, and eventually my friend. God took me on this strange path. But if you'd asked me at any point prior to 2006, Eric, do you ever think you'll write a biography? I would have said, just like with the children's books, I said, absolutely not. Not maybe, but no, I won't. But I'll do whatever God calls me to do, but I don't feel like I'm writing a biography. And I think that what happened was, I wrote some books on apologetics. I always wanted to share my faith, and I always have this belief that, again, I said, most people in America don't really know what they believe. They're not hostile. They don't hate God. They don't know if they want to, jump in to hang out with your tribe because you're a little too this, a little too that. But They have questions. And so I wrote some books of apologetics with some humor called Everything You Always Want to Know About God, but We're Afraid to Ask. And I was totally miraculously on CNN talking about that book. Now, if you watch CNN, you may notice they don't have Christian apologists on all that often. Have you noticed that? You've watched? Yeah. And in the course of talking about the book, I mentioned, well, no, in the book, I had a tiny paragraph about Wilberforce, because I said, he's somebody who took the Bible seriously and consequently changed the world. Well, I just mentioned it, just a paragraph, and the host on CNN asked me about that. I was expecting to get questions about, the meaning of the universe, demons, angels. No, I get a question about, what's this about this history, about this Wilberforce thing? So I'm on national TV, and I talked a little bit about Wilberforce. I didn't know much about him except what I'd written, that this is a man who abolished the slave trade because of his faith in Jesus. So I mentioned this. Publisher contacted me, how'd you like to write a biography of Wilberforce? There's a movie coming out about Wilberforce. And I prayed about it, and this is one of these rare cases where the Lord spoke to me. I don't know if is that in your comfort zone theologically? He always speaks to me through a unicorn named Blinky. I don't know if that's biblical. Is that biblical? Maybe I'm going on a limb. But I'm here to challenge you tonight, my friends. And but in all seriousness, it was one of these things I said, God wants me to write a biography, and I did. And I kept getting the question, who are you going to write about next? As though I finally found, the genre that I'm going to stick with for my life. And I said, well, I don't really want to write another biography. I suppose if I ever did, the only person I'd write about, I think, would be Bonhoeffer, because I remember hearing about him the summer I came to faith in 1988. I remember my co-worker, the guy who shared his faith with me, gave me a copy of Cost of Discipleship and says, have you ever heard of Bonhoeffer? I said, no, who's Bonhoeffer? And he says, oh, he's a German pastor who, because of his faith in Jesus Christ, stood up for the Jews and gave his life in a concentration camp at the end of the war. I said, what? I've never heard this story. A Christian who did the right thing? Really? A positive faith story? I've never heard one of those. And I wondered, why have I never heard one of those? And then I remembered that I had attended Yale University. So I was really interested. I was interested because I said my mother grew up in Germany during that period. My grandfather was killed in the war. He was a genuinely reluctant German soldier who he did not like the Nazis. My mother told me a story the other day about how she had a small house, like a playhouse that some neighbor had given her with, had a Nazi flag on it. And her father said, it's a beautiful house, you can play with it, but give me that flag. He took it away. There are many Germans like that. And I thought Bonhoeffer was one of the Germans who spoke up, not just for the Jews, but for Germans like my grandfather, who had no voice, and who had to go along with things and die at age 31, leaving my mother, a 9-year-old girl without a daddy. And I was always thinking about this, and Bonhoeffer was somebody who intrigued me, so I decided I'll write a book on Bonhoeffer. Well, I have to tell you, I didn't know what I was getting into. It was very difficult. I had to switch publishers. Very painful trial in my life, and I won't tell that story either. Actually, I do tell that story, most of it, in the book that's coming out in 3 weeks called Miracles. It's a whole story, actually an amazing story. But the fact is that God called me to write that book. And tough as it was, I knew God had called me to do it. And I'm not going to get into that, but I will tell you, sometimes you need to know that. It doesn't mean you're going to need to know that about every little thing in life, but basically there are times when you need to know that God called me to do this, and he did. And I wrote the book, and as many of you know, the book changed my life because I just was expecting to pay the rent. I just want to pay the rent. I didn't think the book would be a bestseller. I didn't think that it would be translated. Now it's been translated into 17 languages. And I'm glad to report it's unbelievable to me, trust me, it's unbelievable to me, and I have been so humbled up front that I am full of gratitude to Jesus for these successes. I'm not going to pretend it's me. I know it ain't, and I'm glad I know. And so it's been translated into 17 languages, and very soon, I'm happy to say, it's going to be translated back into English, and we can all read it again. Isn't that great? That's great. As a result of writing this book, I got to meet 2 U.S. presidents, James Polk and Truman, and all right, I just want to know you're still listening. No, I got to meet George W. Bush. I spent an hour with him in his office in Dallas. He sent me a letter that he'd read Bonhoeffer. Again, I'm the son of European immigrants. I'm not used to getting handwritten letters from the president. It's a gift from God. It's a privilege, and I rejoice. I got to meet President Obama at the National Prayer Breakfast as a result of that. This is God, folks. And I think that the reason Bonhoeffer has been so successful as a book is because, this is the theme, we need heroes. We are hungry for heroes. And we have lived in an era, those of you who are roughly my age, where heroes have not been in vogue, right? Basically since the 60s, heroes are not in vogue. We live in a time where the heroic has been denigrated. It's part of a larger worldview, and this is again why Christian education is so important. It's about worldview. And we've lived at a time that's been perpetually suspicious, often with good reason, but it can go too far, and it's gone too far, right? Watergate, Vietnam, these things, I think, did something to our national psyche to make us so suspicious of authority and leaders that when we say question authority, it's not in the healthy sense, where you say question authority to determine if it's legitimate. We are called by God to do that. But if you question the very idea of authority, you've gone too far, right? If I say all authority is corrupt, right? You know, it's like in the 60s, everybody over 30 is, I wouldn't trust anybody over 30. All leaders are corrupt. Every president is doing stuff. If you have that attitude, it undermines everything, and it destroys your ability to have faith in the system, or at least enough faith in the system to work to make the system better. You just forget about it. We've lived in a time where the heroic has been denigrated, right? What do we know about George Washington? I mean, if you're 80 years old, you know George Washington's the father of the country. He crossed the Delaware, one of the greatest men who ever lived, which is true, right? If you're 20, you probably know, yeah, he's a slave owner and a hypocrite. Next question, Now, that's not good, folks, because, first of all, you need context for people. But again, if you're focusing on the negative, if the idea of a hero, the very idea of a hero is unpalatable, then you'll never have any heroes. Because first of all, except for Jesus, we're all flawed. So if you focus on everybody's flaws, you'll never have heroes. But the problem is, and again, this is why I think the Bonhoeffer book was popular, is because we happen to need heroes. Human beings need heroes. So if you live in a culture that just tells you, hey, everybody's corrupt and, just don't be a hypocrite, like we've all got our vices. I mean, if that's the attitude, we'll never aspire to anything. We'll never really rise to even begin to be who we're meant to be. And so the story of Bonhoeffer, people keep coming up to me and saying it changed their life. Well, I know it's not my book. It's his life. He lived that. I just wrote about it. He lived it. And when you live a heroic life, it changes everything. And this man lived that kind of a life. And I began to see, as a result of writing about Wilberforce and Bonhoeffer, that we need heroes, and we're living in a time that is starved for heroes. Young people especially need heroes, and we parents, you know this. You know this. If you're raising a boy, don't you want him to look up to some people, right? Now, ideally, we should look up to our dads and our grandparents, our teachers and stuff like that. But even if you can't, even if you don't have a father, there should be people that you can point to and say, I want to be like that. Because that's how human beings are made. We're not made to get our character out of a book, okay? It's people. Jesus didn't kind of, shoot down to earth, hand out some mimeograph forms and say, you got it, I'll see you later. He lived among us. Why did he do that? Why did he live among the disciples? Couldn't he just give them the information? It's not about information. The building blocks of the universe are human beings. The human being is God's building block. And God cares about people. It's not about ideas, right? It's like, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. God created us in his image. And he wants us to learn from each other, to be models for the people around us. And he wants each of us to have models to look at. So Jesus came to live among us. And you look at his life, and his disciples saw his life. When you see the life of a hero, in that case the ultimate hero, it does something to you. It's not about information. And so if you get an education that's all about information, you have nothing. It needs to be about a person. A person is at the heart of it. Education is hollow unless at the heart of it is the person of Jesus Christ, who embodies the idea that you're made in his image. He made you, he redeemed you, and he loves you, and he's with you, and he's leading you. That's completely different than if I give you skills and information. Those things are just, they're neutral. They don't say anything. They don't speak to us. And so it became real clear to me, as I said, in writing these books, how the heroic is exactly what we're looking for. And I don't just mean certain people. I mean each one of us. God created us to have people to look to inspire us. For some of us, it's our parents. For some of us, it's an uncle or a grandparent. And for some of us, it's just someone we read about. It might be Jesus, or it might be David, or it might be Wilberforce, or it might be a whole group that I have mentioned. But that's how God intended it. And we've lived in an age that has denigrated the heroic, that's basically said there's a worm in every apple, be suspicious. There's a steroid in every slugger, every sprinter. It's all corrupt. Don't trust it. That cynicism is corrosive, and it is robbing generations of young men and women from having hope and joy and being able to be heroes themselves, because we're all meant by God to be heroes, to participate in this battle of good and evil, that this is real. We're living in a real world full of devils and angels, where we can choose between evil and what is holy. That's real. It's not this meaningless thing. So I want to commend you, first of all, for having this house system. I have to say, when I heard that, I thought that's so wonderful. The King's College in New York City, I'm affiliated with them. Yes, we have a Christian college in Manhattan. And they've got a house system as well. And I think it's just a wonderful thing to set up heroes. When I was at Yale, I remember they did just the opposite. The name of the college that I was part, Yale has a college system, right? 12 colleges, kind of similar, right? Each one is named for somebody. And you could tell when I was there that they had already moved on. Like, that's the name, but we're not going to, like, lift up Jonathan Edwards as anybody special. Maybe when they started the college in 1930, that was a nice idea, but the idea of lifting up heroes, it was anathema. They made them uncomfortable. I praise God that there is Christian education where that doesn't happen. I also want to say that the role of faith, which we're living in a time where that's denigrated, of course. And I want us to remind ourselves that we should never apologize for being people of faith. And we should, in fact, not just not apologize, but push back and let people deal with the history. If it had not been for people passionate about Jesus of Nazareth, we would have had no abolitionist movement. That's a fact. It doesn't mean that every single abolitionist was a serious Christian, but the leaders in the beginning all were. And we know that Wilberforce was the ultimate pioneer of this. There was no abolitionist movement before Wilberforce. Frederick Douglass and Lincoln looked to him as the forefather, as the pioneer, the founder of the movement, totally motivated by his faith in Jesus Christ. People need to deal with that. Doesn't mean they need to become Christians, that they need to agree with it, but don't let them get away with the idea that a world without faith is good. That is, it's as if somebody said to you, 1 + 1 = 3. You need to laugh in their face first, and then say, no, it's 2. Let me break it down for you, and then you can show them. We need to take it that seriously, that it's like somebody says 1 + 1 = 3. History screams that that's not true, that people of faith in Jesus Christ, the more fanatical, the better, right? The lukewarm people never seem to do much. Now, I'm not talking about people who are fanatical in error. There's always going to be maniacs who twist the faith. Of course, there's going to be. People want to talk about that. No. The fact is that it has been people of faith, biblical faith, that have changed the world for the better. There is no doubt about that. Now, people don't need to like it, but it's a fact. And we need to know that, we need to represent that, because it's true. The founders of the United States of America knew this, and that is why they gave us religious freedom. Because they understood that if we do not have a country full of people able to exercise their faith in a robust way, the system won't work. Now, again, that's a fact. Democracy, the way the founders gave it to us, cannot function unless you have a moral populace. Self-government cannot work unless the people have some kind of morality, which in almost all cases, at least in more than half the cases, is fueled by faith in something larger than themselves. I don't steal. Why? Because I won't get caught? Why? Because I believe it's wrong. Because I believe God is my judge, so I don't steal. So if you have a country of people who believe that and don't steal, you need fewer cops, taxes are lower. That's self-government. Self-government, where we govern ourselves. That's the way the founders set it up. And they said, if we don't have a religious people, a moral people, the system can't work. Not won't work, cannot work. That's what the founders said. I'm not stretching it here, folks. This is basic stuff which we've forgotten because in the last 40 years we've not been taught these things. And our country is obviously suffering as a result. These are very, very important ideas. People of faith are responsible for the civil rights movement. Have we forgotten that? What do we think? It was just like a bunch of liberal Democrats, secular liberal Democrats? That's simply not true. It came out of the churches. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was robustly, earnestly Christian in everything that he said. His letter from the Birmingham jail, everything you read, it's about faith. So is he just some like religious bigot? What was he? No, he was a man motivated by his Christian faith to do the right thing, who motivated others to do the right thing. Rosa Parks was a very serious Christian, specifically chosen to lead the Montgomery bus boycott, okay? To be the guinea pig. Why? Because they knew she was a woman of upright, devout Christian character and faith. That's why she was chosen, because of her faith. Jackie Robinson, if you read my book, 7 Men, you know this, but most people in America have no idea that Jackie Robinson, the man who broke the color barrier in baseball, was a devout Christian. Branch Rickey, who recruited him for the Dodgers, was a devout Christian, and that in their first conversation they talked about Jesus Christ and turning the other cheek. Folks, this is called history. And there's nothing we can do about it. It just happens to be true. It's not that we like it to be true. It happens to be true that people of faith have tended to be some of the greatest heroes in Western civilization and certainly in the United States of America. We need to be aware of that and not to run from it. The young woman who was talking about Mother Teresa, I have to tell you, some of you saw me on video talk at the National Prayer Breakfast. Well, let me tell you how I got to say what I said. I said, you can watch it on YouTube, obviously, but what inspired me was a 4'11" Albanian nun called Mother Teresa. In the history of the National Prayer Breakfast, most of the speeches are so anodyne, benign, inoffensive, that you don't remember anything. You know, it's kind of like, oh, it's a bipartisan group, so don't offend anybody. Go. You're not going to get much of a speech. Mother Teresa spoke in 1994, and whenever you talk to anybody, whenever I spoke to anybody at the National Prayer Breakfast, they would only mention Mother Teresa because her speech was heroic. When she talks, there's a holiness, and she spoke courageously with no fear about life, about abortion. She spoke about these things in a gracious way. You know, we're not meant to spike the ball and gloat and dance in the end zone. We're meant to be humble, with humility, but with courage. She spoke. And that inspired me. And I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, even if the giant is only 4'11". Because that's what happens when you exhibit courage. You inspire other people to be outspoken and to be courageous. That's why God created us. We need heroes, because they inspire us so that we can then behave in a way that will inspire others. Whatever you do, people are watching you, and you will either lead others away from God and truth and courage, or toward it. Every moment of our lives. That's a chilling, sobering thought, but that's how God created us. And apart from Him, we simply can't pull it off. There's no way to pull it off. I want to say that the idea of being a hero is something that we need to know can't really work unless we're constantly reminding ourselves, unless we're constantly showing ourselves other people who can inspire us. And so that is really at the heart of why Christian education is so important to me, and it's why I want to say to you tonight, what you're doing here is very, 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 very important. This is not just some little school to keep your kids, away from drugs or whatever it is. No, this is an incubator. God has created an incubator here. And if you come from the outside, especially as I do, as Brandy does, and a couple of other you here, you know that this is not normal, that this is special, and it's fragile. And that if this goes away, what are the alternatives? How many young lives are utterly dependent, in this case, on the check you will write tonight? No pressure. I want to tell you folks, the time is short. We'll have a few minutes for Q&A, but the time is short. You know and I know that these times are dark. Things are happening I don't need to tell you. The lack of leadership that we're seeing right now is monstrous. It's unprecedented. And we know that silence in the face of evil is itself evil. The idea of being silent in the face of evil, it's a chilling thing. Evil will win. We're living in important times. Religious liberty is under tremendous threat, which is why I want to tell you to be proud of the role faith has played in history, because faith is under attack, and it's a joke that it's under attack. The founders did not give us freedom of worship. Freedom of worship they have in China. Go in that little building, do your little stuff, and then when you come out, you bow to the secular orthodoxy of the state. No. They had that in Germany when Bonhoeffer was there. That is not God's plan, and that's not what the founders gave us. The founders gave us a system where we have utter religious freedom, specifically to exercise our faith. Not to just be able to do a little bit and, not offend anybody, to exercise your faith. Because if Wilberforce had not robustly exercised his faith like a fanatical believer in Jesus Christ, slavery would have remained. Now, if you care about the Africans suffering, you are going to exercise your faith. You're going to take your faith into the political realm, into the public sphere. That's what God wants us to do. If Wilberforce had not taken his faith into the public sphere, then what? Do you know how many people told him, shut up, keep it private, don't bring your religion into the public sphere? Do you know how many people told him that? How many times have you heard that? I mean, if you hang around secular people, they say, I keep my faith as private. Private faith is no faith, folks. Private faith is cowardice and a joke. Faith can't be private. You live it, and again, the founders said that if you don't live your faith, if you don't live in a culture where people have the freedom to live their faith and exercise their faith in the way that Wilberforce did, and Bonhoeffer did, and Jackie Robinson did, and Rosa Parks did, and on and on and on, the goodness in America will evaporate. This is a fragile experiment in liberty, and without robust religious liberty, it will eventually, fairly quickly, be over. So I say that to say to you tonight that the time genuinely is short. And what I want you to remember, before we go into a few minutes of Q&A, I want you to remember that many, many Germans in the 1930s waited a little bit too long, and then it was too late. Now that sounds like I'm just saying that. I promise you, it's like Gulliver being tied down by the Lilliputians. He's sleeping, and the Lilliputians put a little string here and a little string here. They're tiny little people putting these little strings, and it's nothing until a certain point. If Gulliver does not wake up, and this is my picture of the American church, and it happened to the German church, if the American church does not wake up in time, eventually it will not be able to stand. The ropes will hold it down, and it will be game over. That happened in Germany, absolutely. If you've read the Bonhoeffer book, you see it happened. Bonhoeffer was trying to wake people up and saying, we need to stand together now, we need to fight now. He said, not quite yet. I'm not willing to maybe lose my job. I don't want to lose my 501c3 status. Not yet, not yet, not yet. He was trying to make them understand that if you don't do it now, it will be too late. Martin Niemöller got it finally. He got it too late. Most of them got it just a little bit too late, where the powers of the state took over, were able to crush religious freedom enough that the whole thing was over. And I'm here to tell you that is absolutely the case in America right now, where the church is on this knife edge, where if we do not wake up and be all in, and when I say all in, whatever that means for you, pretend there is no tomorrow. So specifically tonight, yeah, that has to do with writing checks, right? Like don't worry too much about tomorrow. I'm not talking to say to be a fool, but you know what? If you die and you didn't do those things, if something happens in the country in a month and you go, oh, I only wish I had, before there was the run on the banks and I lost everything, I wish I had given that money to do something with it. That's what God is saying to us right now. Now is the time. And you let the Holy Spirit speak to you. This is not about fear-mongering, but I just want to tell you, the time is that short where we've got to be all in. We've got to be heroes. We've got to do the things that we know we're capable of, but we say, not yet, not yet. I would say, yet. Right now, the church has to be the church in the United States of America, and it means that every single institution like the school, support it with everything you have, every opportunity you have to be a faithful Christian. You need to go all out now. That's really the message that I have for you. And I mean that. So I will stop there and we'll have some questions. Thank you.